Really? Do you? Do you like the glasses? I'm going for intelligence virtue signaling because I thought it would lend credence to the rest of today's video, which is a video ranking different editions of classic books. I got these glasses years ago and wore them a grand total of probably 2 times. Why, you ask? Well, for a handful of reasons. One, I decided good vision was not for me. That I was not born with good vision and I was not born for good vision. I prefer my vision to be in constant competition with Monet. 2, the right lens is actually completely clear. My left eye is the only one of the pair that is impaired. What I actually needed was a monocle and instead I got these. Third reason I don't wear these is because I feel like I'm cosplaying something. I'm not entirely sure what, but I feel like I'm cosplaying something. Maybe an illicit librarian. And the last reason is that I now drink carrot juice, which completely obviates the need for eyewear. Did I say what we're doing? We are ranking. It's not my opinion, it is a definitive ranking of editions of classic books, with maybe a few editions that are, you might be like, those aren't classics, but sa vie, c'est la vie. Let's get into it before my intelligence virtue signaling loses its hold on you. We're starting from worst and going to best. You're probably wondering, what is this piece of paper for? It is because I don't own the worst editions. And maybe if I'm feeling generous, I'll put a picture right here. We're starting off with the Dover Blue Modern Thrift Editions. They're just called Dover Thrift Editions, but they're blue. I hate these books. They're absolutely terrible. They look horrendous. If you own one of these books, you are definitely on the capital R registry. These are by far the worst, terrible editions. I think the quality of them is terrible too. I don't own these books. I just recoil whenever I see them at a thrift store or a real store. The next book, the next edition, the people will be up in arms, and that is the Penguin. I also don't own them. The Penguin cloth-bound classics. I hate those editions. They're so ugly, and I don't think anybody actually reads from them. You know what I'm saying? I hate them. I have absolutely nothing but disdain for those editions. I don't get it. Next on the list is one that I do own, and I've gotten rid of all but this one, which was in a get rid of pile before I decided to film this video. That is the new Barnes & Noble Classics editions. I hate these. I really, really hate these. They're so cheap, which is nice, and the paper quality is actually pretty nice, but for some reason they just rub me the wrong way. I also don't like it's not laminated, but it's a kind of matte cover that peels to reveal glossy. Like, it's not high quality. Do you see what I'm saying? Like right there. I would rather have the original Barnes & Noble Classics, but if these are your thing, more power to you. I actually don't mind some of the covers. Like this one is gorgeous. It's gorgeous, but I don't like the trend toward modernizing the cover art of classics. I think it's tacky. It feels like just a marketing scheme to sell books that most people don't want to read, and that's exactly what it is. I don't like these. I don't like this. When they first came out, I was obsessed with them. Now I hate them. This is controversial. Prime yourselves, calm down. I don't like these. These are the Penguin Modern Classics, the black spine that everybody loves. I don't like these. I think they're completely characterless, completely charmless. The quality of these books also varies widely. This is, I think, an older edition. They reissued them and now they look different and the quality is a little different, so I'm kind of thrown off. Some of them are really nice and floppy, others are completely board stiff. This one is somewhere in between. It's pretty floppy, it's nice, but I don't like these. I feel like these black Penguin Classics are just intelligentsia virtue signaling, and there's not room for the both of us. Next on this list, and I'm kind of split. I like how ugly these are. They're kind of like actually horrific. These are the Penguin Classics Deluxe Editions, and you'll know these because it says Penguin Classics Deluxe Edition on the spine, and on the pages they're deckled. Growing up, I thought deckled edges were, not that I knew what they were called, but I thought they were really cool because of a series of unfortunate events. But now I really hate them because I can't flip to where I want to in the book, especially if I've annotated it or made any markings. It is so hard to get back to a specific page, and I have to do this weird thing where I like drape my wrist in it. And these editions also fall into the trend of modernizing classic book edition covers, and I don't enjoy that. Like I said, I think it's tacky. But sometimes I fall victim to it because they are beautiful and they're fun. For example, the Penguin Deluxe edition copy of Dante's Inferno, well, the Divine Comedy, all three of them in one is so beautiful. It's beautiful, and I would buy it. I would buy it. So these mixed opinions, kind of a love-hate relationship. The Penguin Classics Deluxe editions ranking so low on my list is indicative of the saying, love is closer to hate than indifference is. And I hate these. Sometimes. Next on this list, and for the most part, I like the Classics editions. I think that even the silly ones have some sort of charm to them, and just let the record reflect, I actually do like the Black Penguin Classics, but in moderation. I don't want a lot of them. I don't like when they're all lined up. It bothers me. I have one or two and I don't mind them. When they're not in formation, I find them nice and refreshingly black. Next on this list, these are so ugly, but it kind of speaks to me. I love an ugly broad. You heard it here first. These are the Modern Library hardcovers. Bought this at a thrift store. Really ugly. Like, really ugly. And the size of it, completely stupid. Like, is this for travel? But why would you bring a hardcover book traveling? I think these are also nice without the dust jacket. Isn't it cool? These are just like high quality, and the dust jacket on the other side of it has a list of all of the current hardcover titles, as it says, from Modern Library. So I think these are fun, but the size aggravates me. I don't understand why a hardcover book would be small. Generally speaking, I don't like small hardcover books. It's like, the inside is also gorgeous. I don't know. These are fine, but they're certainly not the creme de la creme. I organized these into the definitive ranking 5 minutes before filming, and it took all of 2 minutes. So take these rankings with a grain of salt, but also with certainty because it is a definitive ranking. These are the new vintage classics editions, and when these first came out, like the Barnes & Noble, I was obsessed with them. I thought they were so cool, so crisp, and they quickly lost their glamour with me. These fall into the modernizing of classic book covers. This one not particularly, and that's why these are middling and not completely at the bottom, because this one's pretty generic, and I like a tree on a cover. I think the spines are fun. I like these little geometric things. Some of them are garishly modern, and I don't like those. This one's fine. Book though, terrible. Next on the list is the old Dover thrift editions, which I don't have many of these. This is actually maybe the only one I own. I've seen them at thrift stores, but they're more rare per se. But I like that it's just a different colored spine and then this banner. They're kind of ugly in a charming way. Outdated, but I like them. Like, this isn't trying to modernize Jane Eyre. It's kind of like what you see is what you get, which I like in a book cover. I don't like there to be a disconnect between cover design and content, even if it favors a beautiful book cover. What I was saying is that I don't know if it's just this edition, but it's too tall. It's aggravatingly tall. Look at how it's like it's like a quarter of an inch, so it's just not the height of other books, which is frustrating and why I don't love these. It's also very cheap paper, but it's kind of reminiscent of a school library in a way, or just kind of like I don't know. Sometimes I like a rough paper. You know this book is old, and the old Dover thrift editions, because guess how much it was when it was printed? $4.50. Isn't that insane? I've been at Barnes & Noble, not that I've been buying books from them, but a paperback now is $17 to $19, which is completely insane. Completely insane. This was $4.50. Awesome. I feel like this is that ugly kid who gets bullied in your class and you feel all the more protective over them because of it. Next on the list is Harper Perennial Modern Classics. I think that this encompasses classics that were from the 20th century. This is 100 Years of Solitude, which I really didn't enjoy and should have been in my last video. Books, popular books I hated, but it was hidden away and I didn't find it until I was like, oh, what about the Harper Perennial Modern Classics? These are 20th century classics, I'm pretty sure. I have a copy of A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, and it's a beautiful edition. It's not that weird turquoise one, it's the one with the little house on it, and it's really beautiful. These, middling, ugly. I don't like this cover, but I think that it fits 100 Years of Solitude really well, and for that reason I actually do kind of like it. They're fine, in the middle for me. Next on this list is another modern library edition. It's the most recent paperbacks. Great flop. Look at that. Look at that. That's crazy. I actually really liked this book cover when I first saw it, probably because it looks like the cover of Melodrama. The colors speak to me, and then the garish pink spine. You're probably wondering, but Charles, you just said that you hate modernizing of classic covers. Listen, I contain multitudes. Sorry to do a whole ass another video within this video, but I forgot an important edition of books that I actually really like. It's coming in middling on the list because it's pretty hit or miss for me, and those are the Folio Society book editions. This is a copy of I Capture the Castle, which I bought because I really love the book, and the edition itself is beautiful. Like I said, they're really hit or miss. A lot of the current editions are absolutely horrendous. The current edition of I Capture the Castle, this is an older one I bought on eBay. The current one is terrible. It's atrocious. But some of the older ones are really beautiful. They are expensive. I mean, on eBay, they're like, some of them aren't bad. Like this, I paid, I don't know, 30 or 40 bucks, but like a hardcover book today at Barnes & Noble is 30 or 40 bucks, so. I also have a copy of Brideshead Revisited, which is beautiful. If you want a special edition of a classic book you really like, look up Folio Society. Or if you want to give it as a gift, I feel like it would be a nice gift if you know someone's favorite book and you think that they would like the style of the book. Like I said, a lot of these absolutely horrible. I currently have my eye on some of Philip Pullman's His Dark Materials editions, but they're too expensive. It's like $200-300, so might have to live without those. Another reason why they're so middling is because I don't know how I feel about the slipcover. I guess it's supposed to make you feel like you're getting more bang for your buck, even though the slipcover probably took like 2 seconds and 50 cents to make. But I don't really love it. It aggravates me to an irrational degree sometimes. Also, older editions, I had a copy of The Go-Between by L.P. Hartley, which I got rid of, but the words were written upside down, per se. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, typically on a book, you'll have the title, and it's written like that. It was written the opposite way, and that really, really frustrated me. It wasn't a misprint, I don't think. It's just how they printed their titles then. So, moving on. The next on this list is the Signet Classics editions. I go back and forth on these. I used to really hate them, and I don't love them because if you crack the spine, it becomes slanted. You see how there's an upward slope? I don't like that because then when it's on your bookshelf, in extreme cases, it looks like that, which is really frustrating. Looking at the pile of books that I ranked lower, I'm now regretting that because I don't actually love these that much. But they're fun. I like the older editions and the newer ones. I think why these ranked so high on the objective definitive ranking is because I like them when I see them at a bookstore, but when I take them home, I'm like, I don't like these. I like that they're crisp little bricks of promise. Next on this list, this is an older edition Penguin Classics that are pocket sized, kind of like the Signet Classics, and I just really like the design of them. I like the neutral black and border on the front, and I like all of the pictures, paintings, whatever, that are on the covers of these editions, particularly this one. I also like that because these are old, they're yellowed inside. I like some yellowing to my book. I think it really endears me to the story, which is crazy, but it's true. Reading a classic book with brand new printer paper white crisp pages is odd and unnerving for me, which is why I love an older classic edition. Also, this has a nicer bend to it than the Signet Classics edition does. The nicer bend. These editions have nicer. Next on the list is, I think these are the old UK Penguin Classic editions, and they're kind of ugly. This is the only one I own, but I like the silver accenting. I think it's garish in a fun way. I like a dumb cover. I haven't been liking the covers that are overly pretty per se. Like I said, like most classic editions are doing today, they're taking these cartoonish or just ultra modern designs, and I don't like that. So I like a lot of the older editions because they're so ugly. Case in point, in 2 books from now. The next one on the ranking is, I think, the modern edition of these. This is also the UK edition, I think, of Penguin Classics. I actually kind of really enjoy these. They usually have a really nice flop to them, and I like the blue a lot with the white. I think they're crisp. I like the cover designs. I think that they're attractive to modern audiences without being too pandery. This is the case in point that I was talking about. Completely ugly cover, but an ugly cover becomes charming the more you read a book. This is Crossing to Safety. Not that we're talking about the actual books. These are the older modern library classics edition. Just for reference, here are the newer ones. I like the older ones much better. I like the bronze and black. I like the ugly covers. I like this block up here. I like this block down here. I think they're beautiful. We'll break character and talk about this book just because it left such an impact on me. And the part that left the greatest impact was actually not the book. It was the afterword. The book itself is enjoyable, very good, great writing. I like it. Wallace Stegner is very kind. This is one of the kindest books I've ever read, if not the kindest, whatever that means. But here's the quote from the afterword, and it's the author of the afterword, not Wallace Stegner, talking about Wallace Stegner. It says, "In the 27 years I knew him, I never heard him succumb to common gossip, and in responding to inquiries about his personal history, he would, as often as not, refer the questioner to his fiction as the best guide to his origins and experiences. But even in The Big Rock Candy Mountain and Recapitulation, the 2 novels most closely tied to his own life, his fiction is not always a particularly reliable guide to the man, as Stegner knew perfectly well. You break experiences up into pieces," he told an interviewer, "and you put them together in different combinations, new combinations, and some are real and some are not, some are documentary, and some are imagined. It takes a pedestrian and literal mind to be worried about which is true and which is not true. It's all of it not true, and it's all of it true." Amen. We're down to the top 5 in the ranking, with 5 coming in as these vintage editions. These are an older edition, I would guess from the 90s, I want to say, maybe 80s, who knows, but around 90s, and I really like these. Like I said, block of color on the spine. I like the font a lot. I love the vintage logo. I love Vintage as a publisher. They've published some of my favorite books, and I love these editions. They're pleasant, a little ugly, a little charming, and I really like them. I think what I'm coming to realize is that I don't like when it's a black or white spine. I like the uniformity to be in color. I like disjointed uniformity, not completely beating you upside the head uniformity, which the irony of me saying that will reveal itself with number 3 on this list. The next is Barnes & Noble Classics editions, the older ones. I actually really love these, in large part because they're so cheap. I don't know if they stopped producing a lot of these when they did their newer editions, but I don't think they completely stopped because I've been seeing the prices inch slowly higher. It's always interesting seeing a book that's the exact same edition, but you look on the back and the price is higher because it's a more recent printing. What I'm saying is that these have increased in price if you go and pick one up at a Barnes & Noble, unless they've had it in stock for years. I like the different colored spine, I love the silver, and I like that the paper quality is not great. It's that same scratchy, pulpy, grainy paper that I really enjoy. I love these editions. They usually kind of way overdo it with the footnotes, but who cares? I also, for the most part, I really like the cover art that they choose for these books. The irony of me saying I don't like black and white and I like the uniformity to be disjointed is that third on this list is the Oxford World's Classics. I don't know what it is about these, but I really, really love them. I have nothing. This list is really just contradiction after contradiction, but these speak to me. The Oxford World's Classics are my Penguin classics, the black ones. I prefer white to black. Second on this list, actually the top two are pretty controversial because they're arguably not classics editions, and you'll see what I mean. Second on this list is New York Review books, and they all have this gorgeous chunk of color on the spine, and it's just a square and then usually a really ugly, weird picture on it. The actual pages of the book, so buttery soft, it's incredible. When I read one of these books, I'm usually petting the page that I'm not reading. They're that soft. They are wonderful. These rank high on my list not just because I like the design of them, but because the books themselves are usually books that were published decades ago in the 20th century and never quite became extremely mainstream. A lot of the books they do publish had their moment, but they never quite transcended into what we would consider a classic, like a bona fide classic. And that's usually because they don't have the mass appeal that something like a 1984 does. They have a lot of texture. The stories have a lot of texture. There are oftentimes flaws in these books, aspects of them that I really don't enjoy, but I like them better for the flaws because there's texture. Storytelling techniques not always conventional. The choices that the author makes aren't conventional. The choices that the author makes aren't conventional. The stories, the choices that the author makes in the books that New York Review Books publishes are not conventional. And for that, I really appreciate it. I do love a flawed book for its texture, if nothing else. Sometimes you read a really great book or just a flawless book and you're like, okay, that was cool. But sometimes you read a flawed book and it makes you think. It gives you something to chew on. And that's what these books do. They're creative, original, fun, and they're among the timeline of books that are now considered classics, but they never quite crossed over into the mainstream. You know you're in for a ride if you pick up a New York Review books. You might hate it, but it'll be fun. Clocking in at number 1, these are the vintage contemporary editions from I think the 90s. I don't know. I love these. I absolutely love these. This is probably heavily influenced by a book I recently finished called Bad Behavior by Mary Gateskill and loved. It was one of these editions. These editions are similar to New York Review books, but probably even less so of classics because I think the publication of these editions lined up with when the stories were first published. Usually these are just lit fic books that kind of flew under the radar, that people for whatever reason did not really click with the mainstream and never became massively popular like Bad Behavior. But I find that these books have a lot of texture. They're very original, and for that I really, really appreciate them. I like how they look, and I like that they're lit fic books that people never really quite appreciated. You know when you pick up one of these that it's going to be a hoot. I forgot to talk about nearly every interesting tidbit I had for these books or whatever thoughts I had when I was picking them out of my bookshelves, but this one is too irresistible for me to pass up in editing. Did you know that there was actually no first US edition of American Psycho? I'm pretty sure. I think, by Bret Easton Ellis. What ended up happening was Simon and Schuster, or whoever was responsible for the book, didn't end up publishing it because there was a lot of controversy. So there's a first UK edition, and then it ended up being published in the US in paperback first. I'm pretty sure there's no first edition hardcover of American Psycho, and it is one of these editions, which fits the bill perfectly, but it somehow managed to cross into the mainstream, probably because of the movie. But case in point, one of the advantages of being so versed in certain editions of books or publishers, but that is not today's video, is that if you're at a thrift store, I buy a lot of my books used, most of them. When you're at a thrift store and you don't have much time, you can just kind of glance the shelves, and the spines of these editions really stick out. All of the editions, not just the vintage contemporaries. And the edition kind of clues you into what the story will be like, or at least certain aspects of what the book will be like. Will it be a stuffy classic? Will it be a more modern, weird, odd, texture-y book? Who knows? This has been the definitive ranking of classic books. I really searched my bookshelves high and low to make sure I didn't miss really popular editions, but I probably did. Let me know what they were, you freak. See you soon.